The smell of coffee usually pulled me out of bed. It was Ethan's ritual, his morning offering. Most days, I'd wake up to the gentle hum of the machine and the clinking of mugs. This particular morning, though, there was only silence. A heavy, unnatural quiet that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I walked into the kitchen, expecting to see him, to hear his usual cheerful, "Good morning, sunshine." Instead, I found a note on the counter. It was weighted down by his brass backdoor key, the one he always kept on his key ring, the one that meant he was home. My stomach tightened even before I read it. The paper was plain, white, torn from a notepad I didn't recognize. His handwriting, usually so neat, was rushed, almost frantic. 4 sentences, stark and cold, stared up at me. I need to be on my own. This isn't working. I need freedom. Don't look for me. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 38 years old. I live in Denver. Or I lived in Denver with Ethan. Now, it was just me, the note, and a silence that felt louder than any scream. The coffee machine was off. There was no gentle hum, no clinking mugs, just the heavy, still air in our kitchen. A kitchen we had picked out together, painted together, spent so many mornings in. He didn't even make coffee. That detail, small as it was, hit me with a surprising force. Ethan always made coffee. Always. This was different. This was absolute. The brass key felt cold and heavy under my fingertips when I picked it up. It was a key to our home, but it was also a symbol of him locking the door on us. I read the note again. Each word was a tiny shard of glass. I need to be on my own. What did that even mean? I thought we were on our own together. This isn't working. Was it not working for him or for us? I thought we were fine. I need freedom. Freedom from what? From me? From our life? And the last one. The instruction. Don't look for me. That was the sharpest shard. That was the command that cut the deepest. He didn't want to be found. He didn't want me in his life anymore. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a plea. It was a statement. A final, definitive statement. The quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the house. A steady drone against the sudden, shocking stillness of my world. My breath caught in my throat. I stood there, rooted to the spot, the note trembling slightly in my hand. The sunlight was starting to stream in through the kitchen window, bright and ordinary. But nothing about this morning felt ordinary. Nothing felt bright. Everything felt broken. And the breaking happened so quietly, so simply, with 4 short sentences on a piece of paper. Instead of breaking down, I froze. My mind didn't race. It stopped completely. The house still smelled faintly of coffee, a scent from a morning that now felt like a lifetime ago. But the aroma was a ghost, a memory of a routine that had vanished. It felt like a stage after the play had ended. The actors gone. The lights dimmed. Only echoes remaining. Every object in the kitchen seemed to hold its breath. The fruit bowl, the ceramic mugs hanging from their hooks, the worn wooden table where we'd eaten countless meals. They all seemed to be waiting, just like me, for something that wasn't coming. Ethan was impulsive. I knew that. He was always chasing the next big idea, the next adventure. I was the steady one, the anchor. Or so I thought. His act of leaving this sudden, brutal departure didn't spark chaos in me. It didn't send me into a spiral of tears or anger. Instead, it sparked clarity. A cold, hard, unyielding clarity that settled deep in my bones. I wasn't a crier. Not easily. Not for things like this. I had always been the one to hold things together. The practical one. The one who fixed problems. But this wasn't a problem I could fix. He made sure of that with his "don't look for me" command. My hands, which had been clutching the note, slowly lowered to the counter. I felt a strange emptiness. Not a burning pain, but a hollow echo where a future used to be. The quiet was so profound it almost roared in my ears. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and quick. I could feel the faint tremor in my hands. The shock was a physical thing, a glass wall between me and the rest of the world. It was a protective shield, I realized later. It stopped the immediate emotional tsunami. It allowed me to think, even if those thoughts were stark and unsettling. The clarity wasn't pleasant. It was a revelation of a different kind of pain. A quiet understanding of betrayal that went deeper than just leaving. It was the understanding that he had planned this, had walked out of our life without a word, without a fight. Just a note. That was the clearest part. He didn't want a conversation. He didn't want to work anything out. He just wanted to be gone. And he wanted me to accept it silently. The sunlight crept further into the kitchen, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Life outside was going on. People were waking up, getting ready for their day, completely unaware that my world had just stopped spinning. The contrast was jarring. How could everything be so normal when my foundation had just crumbled? I looked at his empty spot at the table. The chair pushed in neatly. A silent accusation. He hadn't even rumpled the covers on his side of the bed this morning. He must have left in the dead of night like a thief. No, not like a thief. A thief takes things. Ethan left things. He left the note. He left me. The stillness in the house wasn't just the absence of his presence. It was the absence of a shared future. It was the quiet of a chapter slammed shut. And in that profound stillness, a different kind of strength began to form. A cold, determined resolve. He wanted freedom. Fine. But his freedom wouldn't come without consequences. My clarity was turning into a plan. My first call wasn't to family. My family meant well, but they were not equipped for this kind of battlefield. My mother would dissolve into tears. My sister would demand to know every detail. And my father would offer useless, gentle advice about talking things through. This wasn't a conversation. This was a war declared by Ethan on a piece of paper. No. My first call was to Victoria Shaw. Everyone in Denver knew Victoria Shaw. She was a legend. Whispered about in hushed tones at ladies' luncheons and golf club locker rooms. They called her Denver's most ruthless divorce attorney. She had a reputation for shredding opposing counsels and leaving ex-spouses with little more than the clothes on their backs. Perfect. I needed a shark. Not a therapist. I needed someone who saw this for what it was, a hostile takeover of my life. If this story resonates with you, please consider hitting the subscribe button, liking, and sharing this video. Your support helps me to keep creating content. I found her number quickly, a name I had kept in the back of my mind for years. Just a hypothetical, if ever. Turns out if ever had arrived. I spoke to her assistant, a brisk woman who sounded like she ate lawyers for breakfast. I kept my voice steady, betraying none of the tremor in my hands. I need an urgent consultation with Ms. Shaw, I said. My husband just left me a note saying he needs freedom. He took off. The assistant's tone changed immediately. A flicker of professional interest. She booked me for that afternoon. My second call was to the bank, specifically to the fraud department. I explained in a calm, flat voice that there had been unauthorized activity on our joint account. I didn't say my husband left me. I said a breach, a professional term for a professional problem. I explained that I needed to protect my assets. The bank representative, hearing the word breach and sensing the urgency, moved quickly. They froze the joint account temporarily, pending an investigation. Ethan wouldn't be able to access a dime. Not yet. Anyway, he wanted freedom. Fine. But he wasn't taking my financial security with him. What Ethan didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had a separate savings account. My quiet just-in-case fund. It wasn't huge, but it was mine. It had been accumulating for years, small transfers from my salary, money I'd saved from freelance projects, a little inheritance from my grandmother. It was my secret stash, my personal rainy day fund that Ethan had never known existed. He had always been so open, so trusting with our money, never questioning why I kept a little more for myself. He just assumed I wasn't as good with money as he was, that I spent more. That was his mistake. That fund was now my lifeline. It was my safety net. It was my power. After those calls, I felt a strange surge of energy. Not happiness, but a cold, clear focus. This was about survival now. This was about protecting myself. This was about making sure that Ethan's freedom came at a price he hadn't anticipated. He thought he could just walk away, leave a note, and disappear into his new, unencumbered life. He thought he could abandon me and our shared life without consequence. He was wrong. Very, very wrong. My mind was like a steel trap, snapping shut on emotions and opening only for strategy. Each step I took felt deliberate, purposeful. There was no room for tears, no space for self-pity, only action. And the actions I was taking were swift, precise. and aimed directly at securing my future. A future that just hours ago had been a blur of uncertainty. Now it was coming into sharp focus. Even if that focus was on the painful task of dismantling a life I thought was solid. I was preparing for battle. And my weapons were legal documents and financial maneuvers. Ethan had started the fight, but I was going to finish it on my terms. His side of the closet was half empty. Not totally empty. Not a clean sweep. Which was almost more insulting. He'd taken his expensive suits, the ones he wore for client meetings and fancy dinners. His Italian leather shoes were gone, too. The ones he polished religiously. His top-of-the-line golf clubs were missing from the corner, and his collection of expensive watches was gone from the dresser drawer. He'd even taken his sleek noise-canceling headphones and the fancy espresso maker he swore by all the things that defined his image. His hobbies. His idea of luxury. But he left behind his dirty sneakers, just sitting there on my rug, muddy and smelling faintly of grass. He left behind a stack of old t-shirts he deemed unworthy, a pair of worn-out jeans and a single lonely sock. It was as if he'd picked through his life, deciding what was valuable enough to take and what wasn't. I apparently was not valuable enough. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. The sight of those dirty sneakers left on my rug was almost comical in its thoughtlessness. It was a perfect encapsulation of Ethan. Take the good. Leave the mess for someone else to clean up. I stood there looking at the gaping space in the closet. The hangers clattering together like ghosts. The emptiness was stark. A physical manifestation of the void he had created. But instead of feeling a renewed wave of sadness, I felt something else. A flicker of defiance. He thought he could just leave his mess and walk away. Not anymore. The clarity from earlier was hardening into resolve. He had made his choices. Now I would make mine. And my choices would not involve waiting around, weeping over his departure. My choices would involve moving forward on my own terms. I packed a bag. Not a suitcase full of clothes for a new life, but a backpack. My hiking boots, worn and comfortable, got laced up. Ethan had always mocked my love for the mountains. Too much effort. Emily, he'd say, preferring a resort with a spa. Why sweat when you can relax? He always saw my need for fresh air and solitude as an inconvenience. A strange quirk. He had even years ago scoffed at my suggestion of a solo mountain trip. You'd get bored, he'd said dismissively. You'd miss me too much. His words echoed in my head. But now they sounded hollow. Ridiculous. He didn't know me at all. He didn't understand that sometimes solitude wasn't loneliness, but a necessary form of healing. So, I grabbed my backpack, my water bottle, and my map. I put the house key on the counter next to the spot where his note had been. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe him one. I simply walked out the door. The Denver skyline shrank in my rearview mirror as I headed west towards the towering Rockies. The air grew crisper, cleaner with every mile. The mountains, vast and ancient, seemed to welcome me. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of something akin to peace. The silence here was different. It wasn't the heavy, Accusatory silence of our kitchen. It was the vast, freeing silence of nature. The silence of possibility. I was going on that solo mountain trip Ethan had once mocked. And I wasn't going to get bored. I wasn't going to miss him. I was going to find myself. As I hiked for days, the world simplified. Each footfall on the trail, the rhythmic swing of my arms, the crisp mountain air filling my lungs. These were my only focus. The vastness of the Rockies dwarfed my problems, turning Ethan's note, his betrayal, into something small and distant. I saw deer moving gracefully through the trees, a hawk circling high above, and felt a connection to something much bigger than my broken marriage. The physical exertion was a balm, a way to sweat out the lingering toxins of shock and hurt. My phone, tucked deep in my backpack, was mostly ignored. I was out here to clear my head, not to wallow in digital grief. But eventually, a weak signal would flicker to life. And with it, the outside world would intrude. And intrude. It did. With a vengeance. When I finally checked my phone after a long day of climbing to a stunning vista, it was a torrent. The screen lit up with dozens of texts, missed calls, and voicemails, all from Ethan. His messages started frantic, then turned increasingly desperate. Why isn't my card working? This one came first. Sent just a day after I'd made that call to the bank. A grim satisfaction tightened my lips. Good. Emily. Call me. We need to talk. Another one a few hours later. Emily. This isn't funny. My accounts are frozen. What did you do? His tone was shifting. The arrogance replaced by a rising panic. He finally understood. My silent, swift action had landed. He wanted freedom. But not the freedom of having no money. That was a different kind of freedom he hadn't accounted for. I scrolled through his social media, a morbid curiosity taking hold. His Instagram, the platform he used to curate his perfect, adventurous life, was a stark contrast to his desperate texts. He was posting pictures of himself at a beach bar, a bright drink in his hand, surrounded by laughing strangers. The captions were full of bravado, finally free, living my best life. No more chains. He was trying to project an image of carefree liberation, but I knew from the desperate messages that it was a hollow performance. He was pretending to be free while simultaneously realizing the heavy cost of that freedom. The hypocrisy was sickening, but also, in a strange way, empowering. He thought he could have his cake and eat it too. He thought he could walk away from our shared life, leaving me to pick up the pieces while he sailed off into a sunset of self-indulgence. His posts were proof he was trying to rub it in, to show me how much better off he was without me. He was trying to inflict more pain, but it didn't work. The mountains had given me a new perspective. His digital taunts felt small, pathetic. By Monday morning, after 5 days of hiking and a long drive back to Denver, I had a new message. This one was from Victoria. He's here. She simply wrote, "Looks like a drowned rat." I pictured him then, rumpled, pale, and panicked. He wouldn't have showered in days, probably trying to conserve what little money he could access. He would have driven straight to her office, convinced he could charm or threaten his way into getting his money back. He was used to things going his way. He was used to people bending to his will. But Victoria Shaw didn't bend. And neither did I. Not anymore. I called her. "Tell him I'm on my way," I said, my voice steady. "Tell him I have a message for him." A short while later, I was there. Victoria's office was sleek, modern, with huge windows overlooking the city. Ethan was in the waiting room, exactly as Victoria had described. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, his face pale and etched with sleepless nights. He jumped up when he saw me, a flicker of hope in his eyes. He thought he had me cornered. He thought he could manipulate me, apologize his way back into my good graces, or at least into getting his money back. I walked past him, my gaze level, straight into Victoria's office. She greeted me with a small, knowing smile. Ethan followed, sputtering. "Emily, what is this? My cards aren't working. My bank accounts are empty." I turned to him, my voice calm, almost dangerously quiet. "You left a note. Ethan, remember, I need freedom. Don't look for me. You asked for freedom. I made sure you got it. And I made sure the finances wouldn't follow." His face fell. The panic deepened, replaced by a dawning realization of the trap he had walked into. His freedom was turning out to be very expensive and very lonely. And I, the woman he thought he could abandon so casually, was holding all the cards. The mountains had given me strength, and Victoria had given me the tools. Ethan had made his bed, and now he was going to lie in it without a cent to his name. My journey of survival had just begun, but I was already winning. The confrontation at Victoria's office left a bitter taste in my mouth, but it was also strangely satisfying. Seeing Ethan stripped of his usual confidence, reduced to a desperate, rumpled man, confirmed that I had done the right thing. He had expected me to be a weeping mess, a puddle of emotions he could easily step over on his way to his new freedom. Instead, he found a locked door, a financial fortress. He found a woman he no longer recognized because, in truth, he had never really seen me in the first place. I returned to the house, and for the first time since he left, the silence didn't feel like a weapon against me. It felt like my own space. The air was mine to breathe. The floor was mine to walk on. The quiet was a canvas, and I was slowly, deliberately beginning to paint a new picture on it. I made myself a cup of tea. The strong black kind, he always said, was too bitter, and sat at the kitchen table. My table. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, thinking it was probably a spam call. But something made me press play. A man's voice, low and hesitant, filled the quiet room. It was a voice thick with a pain I was just beginning to understand. Emily. Emily Carter. This is Michael Hayes. I'm Jessica Hayes's husband. We've met a couple of times at your husband's company parties. I don't know how to say this. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you, but I think you need to know. He paused, taking a shaky breath, and the world seemed to slow down. Ethan's been seeing my wife for months. He's been seeing Jessica for at least 6 months. I found the messages. I just thought you should know. He hung up. The message ended, but the words didn't. They hung in the air, echoing in the stillness of my kitchen. Ethan's been seeing my wife for months. Jessica Hayes. My coworker. Not just a random woman, but someone from my world. Someone I saw in the hallways. Someone I exchanged polite smiles with at the coffee machine. The suspicion I'd been pushing down for so long. The nagging feeling that something was off. Suddenly hardened into a brutal, undeniable truth. It was a physical blow. The air rushed out of my lungs, and the teacup felt impossibly heavy in my hand. My mind, which had been so clear and strategic, was suddenly a chaotic slideshow of memories, each one now tainted, reframed by this new, ugly reality. The late nights at the office. He'd told me they were working on a huge new project, that the deadlines were killer. He'd come home exhausted, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine. When I'd asked about it once, he laughed it off. Must have been in a crowded elevator. You know how it is. I had believed him. I had made him dinner, drawn him a bath, sympathized with his stress. I had been his soft place to land after he'd spent hours in the arms of another woman. The thought was a hot knife twisting in my gut. The humiliation was immediate and overwhelming. I had been a fool. A trusting, naive fool. Jessica Hayes. I pictured her now. She was ambitious, sharp, always dressed in impeccably tailored suits. She was the kind of woman who commanded attention when she walked into a room. I had never disliked her, but I had always found her a little intimidating, a little too polished. We weren't friends, just colleagues who moved in the same professional circles. Now, I saw every brief interaction with her in a new, sinister light. The company Christmas party last year. I remembered seeing her and Ethan talking in a corner, laughing a little too loudly. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. Networking. I told myself. Now I saw it for what it was. A stolen moment between lovers right under my nose. I remembered a time Ethan came home with a new expensive tie. Jessica helped me pick it out. He'd said casually. She has great taste. The memory, so innocent then, was now dripping with poison. She hadn't just helped him pick out a tie. She had been helping him build a separate life. A life where I had no place. His need for freedom wasn't a noble existential crisis. It was a cheap excuse. A coward's way out. He didn't leave me to find himself. He left me to be with someone else. The note wasn't a desperate plea for independence. It was a getaway plan. He wanted a clean break. No messy conversations. No tearful goodbyes. So he could slide seamlessly into his new life with her. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He had tried to erase me, to make me feel like the problem, like my stability and love were a cage he needed to escape. But I wasn't the cage. Our marriage wasn't the cage. His own deceit was the cage. And he was the one who had locked the door. The pain was different this time. The initial shock of the note had been a hollow, empty ache. This was a sharp, burning pain. It was the pain of personal betrayal, the sting of being replaced, the shame of being lied to so completely, and the windows were grimy. It was the kind of place you only stay at if you have no other choice. But I saw something else. It was built with a solid foundation, and it had a prime location near the airport and major highways. It had good bones. I spent months creating a business plan. I drained my entire life savings, every dollar I had worked so hard for. It was just enough for a down payment. I went to a dozen banks for a loan. They all laughed at me. A young woman with no collateral wanting to buy a derelict motel. It was a joke to them. Finally, the sadness and distilled them into one pure, potent feeling, anger. But it wasn't a wild, out-of-control anger. It was a quiet, methodical anger, the kind that builds empires and wins wars. This new information wasn't just a source of pain. It was ammunition. It was proof. It was the key that unlocked the entire mystery of his behavior over the last year. All the pieces clicked into place. The sudden need for expensive suits, the secret credit card bills I'd found and he'd explained away, the emotional distance that had grown between us, which I had blamed on his work stress. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed, long-running lie. The knowledge was liberating. I was no longer grieving a man who was lost and confused. I was now fighting a man who was a liar and a cheat. It simplified everything. There was no room for doubt. No space for wondering if I could have done something differently. This was not my fault. His betrayal was not a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of his character. Or lack thereof. He was a cliché. The cheating husband running off with a coworker. And I was not going to be the cliché of the weeping, abandoned wife. I was going to be the woman who took him for everything he had. I picked up my phone again. My fingers were steady as I typed a message to Victoria. It was short. To the point. I have new information. His affair. I have a name and a witness. The war just changed. I hit send. The house was still quiet. But now it felt like the quiet of a command center. A place where plans were made and battles were won. The pain was still there. A deep, throbbing ache in my chest. But it was no longer just pain. It was fuel. And I was ready to burn his world to the ground. 2 nights later, the doorbell rang. It was late. Almost 10, and the sharp, insistent chime cut through the quiet house like a siren. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart hammered against my ribs. A primal fear response. My first thought was of Ethan. My second was that I was alone and vulnerable. I crept to the door, my stocking feet silent on the hardwood floor. Peeking through the peephole, my blood ran cold. It was him. Ethan stood on my porch, his shoulders slumped, his face illuminated by the pale yellow light. But he wasn't alone. Standing slightly behind him, half hidden in the shadows, was Jessica Hayes. Seeing them together, right there on the doorstep of the home he and I had shared, was a different kind of pain. It was brazen. It was a slap in the face. Michael Hayes's voicemail had been the abstract truth. This was the living, breathing confirmation. They were a team, a unit, and they were here to invade my sanctuary. I took a deep, steadying breath, my fear quickly being replaced by the now familiar cold fury. I had Victoria's voice in my head. Do not engage. Do not let him in. Record everything. I unlocked the door but left the security chain firmly in place, opening it just a few inches. The cool night air hit my face. Emily, Ethan began, his voice attempting a gentleness that was laughably false. He even tried to smile, but it was a weak, flimsy thing. We need to talk. I need to get my things. Behind him, Jessica shifted uncomfortably. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She just stared at the welcome mat. A silent, complicit partner in this whole charade. She was wearing a stylish trench coat, her hair perfect, even in the dim light. They looked like a power couple, momentarily inconvenienced. The sight of them, so put together, so entitled, solidified my resolve. There's nothing to talk about. Ethan, I said, my voice as flat and hard as the steel of the chain between us. And you are not coming into this house. His smile vanished. A flicker of his old arrogance returned. Don't be ridiculous. Emily, half of the stuff in there is mine. I just want my golf clubs, my winter clothes, my desktop computer. My heart skipped a beat at the mention of the computer. The desktop. He wanted to erase the evidence. The thought was so clear, so certain. It was like a lightning strike. That was the real reason he was here. He knew what was on it. He was here to cover his tracks. Your belongings are a legal matter now, I stated calmly, repeating the words Victoria had coached me on. They will be handled through our attorneys. You are not to contact me directly, and you are certainly not welcome on this property. Jessica finally looked up, her expression a mixture of pity and impatience, as if I were the one making things difficult. As if I were the irrational one. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Ethan's face darkened. The desperation I had seen at the lawyer's office was curdling into anger. He took a step forward, his hand resting on the door as if to push it open. Emily, I'm not asking. This is my house, too. I just want my things. He pushed against the door, and the chain groaned, holding firm. The sound was a loud, metallic protest in the quiet night. This is my home, I said. my voice low and trembling slightly. But not with fear. With rage. You gave up your right to it when you left that note on the counter. You're trespassing. That's when he lost it. The mask of the reasonable, wronged man fell away. And the real Ethan was there. A petulant, angry bully who wasn't getting his way. He rattled the door, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. Don't make me make this difficult. Emily. The words hung in the air between us. Heavy and toxic. It wasn't a plea. It was a threat. The world seemed to narrow to the small space between us. The chain door, the only thing protecting me. For a second, I felt a flicker of the old fear. He was bigger than me. Stronger. But then I remembered I wasn't the same woman he had left behind. I was no longer his victim. Without breaking eye contact, I slowly raised my cell phone, which I had been holding in my hand the entire time. I made sure the screen, bright with the red dot of the recording app, was visible to him. Is that advice? Ethan, I asked, my voice chillingly calm. Or is that a threat? Because it's recorded. The change was instantaneous. He froze, his hand dropping from the door as if it had been burned. His face went pale, a mixture of shock and dawning horror washing over him. He looked from my phone to my face and saw not the pliable, gentle Emily he knew, but a stranger, a woman made of ice and steel. He looked at Jessica, who was now staring at him, her eyes wide with alarm. He had overplayed his hand, and he knew it. He had just threatened me with a witness while being recorded. It was a fatal mistake. They stood there for a long moment, the silence thick with his defeat. He had no more words, no more bluster. I had won. I had taken his power. And now he was just a man on a porch, locked out of a life he had thrown away. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Jessica, after one last fleeting look at me, a look I couldn't decipher, a mixture of anger and perhaps a tiny bit of fear followed him. I watched them retreat down the walkway, their unified front completely shattered. They got into her sleek, expensive car and drove off into the night. I closed the door, slid the deadbolt into place, and leaned against it, my body trembling with adrenaline. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. Not yet. I just felt the cold, hard certainty of what I had to do next. He had come for the computer. It was time I found out what was on it. That night, sleep was impossible. The confrontation at the door had left me buzzing with a nervous, angry energy.